The old paradigm is crumbling and falling to the ground, making way for the new paradigm. Unbelievable video. I had to share this video with you guys of the man who owns the world. Larry Fink, for those of you who don't know, he is the head of the largest investment fund in the world. What do they got, like 10, 15 trillion in assets under management now? They own basically all the stock markets of the world. On top of that, according to governments, they are also the largest shadow banking service in the world. So this is a man who is in the know. They have the largest proprietary AI on the planet, I believe, that actually incorporates information from around the world into their trading schemes. And what his AI and what his team have concluded is racist, xenophobic nations who do not allow immigration, quote unquote, will become the big winner and will lead the world forward. I mean, this is stunning, right? This is a man, by the way, who has been pushing and pushing for mass immigration into all Western nations his entire career, right? And to have a 180-degree turn on this issue is just unfathomable. I just cannot even believe what I'm listening to. Of course, the old paradigm that Larry Fink supported was that mass immigration was the only way to allow economic prosperity in the future. And so this was the paradigm that we were taught on television, the big media, for the last, I don't know, 50, 60 years, at least here in the United States, right? And Larry Fink and BlackRock have now flushed that old paradigm totally down the toilet and found that it's totally wrong, which is very odd because that's exactly what I and other people have been saying for years, right? Is that it makes no sense. Why would flooding your home with 10 or 20 or 30 third world immigrants make you wealthier? The whole entire idea that you were going to import the third world and become wealthy through that process is just absurd. Now, as you'll see in this video, Mr. Fink focuses on the very obvious point that these evil nations that do not allow mass immigration are going to be forced to develop technologies that develop their own economies and increase the standard of living of their own people. Right? I mean, and this is just an obvious point, right? Necessity is the mother of invention, right? What Mr. Fink does not mention, though, is the huge cost that mass immigration also produces on the economy. Just one quick example of that here, where I went to the U.S. government census data and I looked up the demographic data on welfare use. And what I found, according to the U.S. government, is that over 50% of all welfare use goes to just one ethnic group in this country, which are blacks. Another almost 28% goes to Hispanics, while the white population only utilizes about 22% of the welfare system, okay? Now, this is bad enough, but when we now factor in the demographic differences in size of these populations, this graph becomes downright shocking. And here's what that graph looks like, okay? What we find out is that since blacks are only like 11 or 12% of the population, but are using 50% of all the welfare, they're actually using 457% more welfare than they should be using based on their population size. I mean, that is unbelievable, right? I mean, and then look at Hispanics. Hispanics are using almost 200% of the amount of welfare that they should be using based on their population size. And then what about the white population? They're actually using negative 250% of the welfare totals that they should be using based on their population size. This graph right here should be standard curriculum in every high school in America. It explains this nation, right? This is the group, by the way, who are paying for most of this. So what's going to happen? I got a question for you, right? So I have a question for you. What's going to happen as this group becomes a minority in this country? The group that's using way less welfare than they should be using and who's paying for all of this, right? By the way, this is welfare use according to the U.S. Census data based on SNAP, which is food, energy, and rental assistance. But without further ado, I present to you the man who owns the world in a diverse audience, explaining that diversity is going to destroy Western nations that allow it.
I could argue in the developed countries, the big winners are countries that have shrinking populations. Okay, that's something that most people never talked about.
Yeah, including you.
We always used to think shrinking population is a cause for negative growth. But in my conversations with the leadership of these large developed countries that have xenophobic immigration policies, they don't allow anybody to come in, tricky demographics, these countries will rapidly develop robotics and AI and technology.
Really?
And the promise of all that transforms productivity, which most of us think it will. We'll be able to elevate the standard of living of countries, the standard of living of individuals.
Really?
Even with shrinking populations. And so the paradigm of negative population growth is going to be changing. And the social problems that one will have be far easier in those countries that have declining populations. And so for those countries that have rising populations, they're going to be left, that's where the divide's going to get more and more extreme.
They're going to be left behind.